All right, I'd like to call Monday, February the 10th, 2020, special meeting, public work session to order. And at this time, if you would please stand for a moment of silence. Amen. At this time, you remain standing for to pledge allegiance.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, Ms. Shoemaker, would you please read our mission statement?
The mission of the Portsmouth Public School Division is to engage all students in learning that will foster academic excellence and responsible citizenship.
Thank you. At this time, Ms. Stewart, would you please call roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Ms. Allen?
Present.
Ms. Atkinson?
Here.
Mr. Barnes?
Here.
Mrs. Hines?
Present.
Mr. Lamb?
Present.
Reverend Patillo? Mrs. Shoemaker?
Present.
Mrs. Williams?
Present.
Mr. Parent? All members are present.
Present. Thank you. At this time, before we go to consideration of the agenda, I would like to recognize Mr. James Bridgeford. He was at the early portion of the earlier meeting, but I don't want to keep him all night. And I'd like to ask him if he has some comments that he would like to make to the board concerning the formula base you on the committee. Any comments that you would like to make? Now that you can make the comments.
Thank you, Chairman Parent. And I'm glad to see that you're not going to throw the baby out with the bath, as you claim, and take another good look at this, to extend the work on it, and to use it as a building of the bridges between the two boards, bodies, governing bodies. As we stated one time before, it wasn't amicable all the way, and I think you can see what happened along the way. We're going to represent you, and maybe see it, because I wonder if I won't have to say anything, because the fight is for the kids, it's not for us.
Right.
The fight is for the kids.
Sure.
And I just wish I had held on to my notes, because at one time we were looking at 33% funding for the school system.
Say that again?
We were looking at 33% funding for the school system.
And that would put us where we need to be.
And that would put us, but somehow it got lost, and I don't have any, I'm sorry, I don't have my notes.
That's okay.
It's been a long time, but I'm proud to see that this board is still in contention for the fight for the kids, because that's the future. And the city, and as soon as they can understand economic development, that they can put some economic development in here, along with education, we'll all realize the profit from it. So I'll do what I can, hopefully, be representative of what you give us to do. We got shut down by not being able to get into details. And be honest with you, like I told you before, I think you can see tonight why I didn't want to try to get into details. If anything had gotten confused, I would have been down the creek. But that's the only thing I have to say. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer.
The 30%, I mean,
The 30%.
30% in the chart showed, obviously it was not unanimous, that was not a unanimous. So when you say 33%, you have other members of the committee that thought that was too high?
In all practicality and reality, you're starting, and I brought this up, you're starting out behind the 8 ball before you start. The funding formula that we came up with is realistic, but all things are not equal. You have at-risk students, period, in this city, and you have to fund by the number of people that you have in your school system. And I don't think they'll ever realize this on the side of council, that you're going to need those people, and that takes extra money. And it's extra money they don't have, but it's something they're going to have to deal with. It's something we have to deal with. And for us for them to say that we give you $500,000 a year, every year, I think you proved it.
Right.
You proved it, and forgive me for saying we, but I think we've proven our point each year that we go for money.
Well, thank you very much. Any board members, if you have any questions you have on Mr. Bridgeford before you leave?
Just want to say thank you.
Yes. Board.
Well, thank you.
Amount of hours.
I didn't have to
spent.
break my integrity and say anything to any one of you all, and you all just, you were good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the citizens should be proud of you. All right. You continue good work. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bridgeford.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
The next item is the consideration of the agenda for February 10th. Madam Clerk, it's roll call. Unless is there any, do I have a motion?
Motion for approval.
Reverend Patillo made the motion.
Second.
You seconded or?
Oh, was there a second?
Yeah, Mr. Lamb seconded.
Mr. Lamb.
Oh, he made the motion, you seconded.
I'm at the
All
end
right.
of the table.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Madam Clerk.
Ms. Allen,
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Hines,
Yes.
Mr. Lamb,
Yes.
Reverend Patillo,
Yes.
Mrs. Shoemake,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Parent.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
The next item calls for closed session, but I'm going to ask, and I should have asked, sir. Oh, right, exactly. You know, Thursday, I hope all of you were safe. I lost a fence. I don't know what you guys lost, trees or what, but we made the call not to have the school board meeting last Thursday. But we had a beautiful array of flowers to give to our clerks. Kathy's out tonight, but Stuart's here. But because the flowers were so beautiful and we wanted them to have it, Dr. Bracy presented it to them. So this is just a card that goes with it, signed by your chair. We want to thank you
Thank you.
very much, and we'll give this one to Kathy. Thank you very much. So you're going to be appreciating the week of the 17th to the 21st.
Yes.
And you do a very good job. Thank you very much.
And my flowers are on my desk if you would like to walk past.
Did you smell it?
Mhm.
Well, it comes a time when the superintendent presents his estimate of needs, so Dr. Bracy, I think you want to do it from up here, all right? Okay. Dr. Bracy. Need it. Maybe one light. There you go, that's perfect, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Parent, Vice Chair Patillo, members of the school board. Tonight is my honor to bring forward my superintendent's estimate of needs for the fiscal year 2020-2021 for your consideration. As you are aware, this process is not done in silos. Tonight's presentation comes after months of listening to our families, staff members, and you all collectively as a board. I want you to know that I value the input we have received along the way as we develop our recommended 2021 budget, and I'm confident you will see your feedback reflected in this presentation as we work to provide the best resources and supports possible for the children of our city. As we begin, I want to turn to our CFO, Theo Falk, to walk us through the first slides of our presentation outlining how we develop our budget.
Thank you, Dr. Bracy, Mr. Parent, Reverend Patillo, board members, good evening. While you're well acquainted with how the budget is constructed, I believe it would be helpful to explain it to the public so they can understand our funding sources and how our budget is put together. The heart of the budget in the center is the general fund, which shapes the balance between revenues and expenditures involved in our day-to-day operations of the schools. As you can see, it's the largest part of this proposal at 76%. The next largest fund is our risk management fund, which represents about 10% of the overall budget. Risk management accounts for all of our expenditures related to our self-insured health and dental programs, insurance premiums, and also workers' compensation claims. The grants fund, which consists of federal, state, and local grant funding to be used for specific purposes. For example, that includes the special ed grant, which you know provides additional resources for students with special needs. That grant, that fund accounts for 9% of this proposal. The cafeteria fund is an enterprise fund. What that means is it's a separate account that's designed to accept fees for a particular service, in this case, our food services program. And then finally, the textbook fund, as its name implies, underwrites textbooks and materials, is the smallest fund in its overall budget at 1%. With that, the total of all of our funds this year is $210.7 million. You'll see the actual dollar amounts from these 5 funds. For the rest of the presentation, we'll address the general fund only, as it pays for operation, and that is the fund where most of our flexibility lies. However, we felt it important that the board and the public would see the fiscal year budget proposal in its entirety for all the funds that we manage. So, as we take a closer look at our operating budget, at $160.3 million, this is $9.5 million above the current year budget of $150.7 million. This proposal includes initiatives identified by the school board, staff, and the community as priorities. These priorities are an employee salary raise, additional instructional positions to enhance student achievement, and a continued focus on student supports and school climate and security enhancements. We've also included funds to continue to enhance instructional programs and technology. Later in the presentation, Dr. Bracy will walk you through the specific additions that we made to this budget. And these initiatives allow us to address the priorities that were made very clear by all of our stakeholders, the community, the school board, and everybody involved in the education of our students. So in short, we work diligently to balance a conservative budget of need. However, we must say that there's a difference between a conservative budget and a stark budget. So this proposal underscores the need to request additional funding from the city to accomplish this proposal. We will get to the specifics of that recommendation in a few minutes, but let's take a look at our current funding at this time. The pyramid of funding, I call this. As you will note, the largest portion of our funds come from state school funds. Our average daily membership is what determines that, as well as our composite index. Our average daily membership is projected to rise to 13,177 students next year, which is an increase of about 185 students over our ADM from fiscal year 18-19 or fiscal year 19-20, our projected ADM. Keep in mind that number doesn't take preschool students into account. This is our revenue outlook for 2021. State funding is projected to go up by about $8.6 million. That number is going up primarily for 4 reasons. The first reason is an increase in basic aid funding of about $5.4 million, and that's primarily due to re-benchmarking. Re-benchmarking is where the state updates its estimates that they use for SOQ, direct aid. It also updates funded salaries, prevailing costs that the state uses, inflation, enrollment, and other programmatic estimates. There is usually a lot of new money in the first year of a biennium, which is the re-benchmarking year. And again, basic aid is the biggest of that $5.4 million increase. There's also an increase in the amount of money that we're going to get from the state in relation to VRS retirement revenue, mainly because the state is increasing the VRS rates about 1% for non-professional as well as professional employees. So that requires the state to increase their allocation to us to cover those costs. That amounted to about $1 million increase. The third area is the governor in his budget, we've heard about it in the media, included additional funds to support at-risk students and initiatives as well. That at-risk fund add-on revenue is projected to be about $2.4 million of an increase. Now, as we know, the state gives and the state takes away. So because they gave us more at-risk funding, as normal, the state funded that increase by decreasing the supplemental lottery monies that we should receive. So they decreased our supplemental lottery funds by about $459,000 to fund the additional amount that they put into the at-risk add-on. With that, we're projected to realize a net increase this year of $8,457,930. And that's if city's funding would remain flat. And we had to live with the $159.2 million budget as outlined in this current funding scenario. But even with our increased state revenue, much of that related to re-benchmarking, as I said, we still need additional revenue to fully fund all of our initiatives in this budget. As the current proposal is not enough to cover all the initiatives, we're asking for additional city funding of about $1.1 million to address the needs of the school division. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Bracy, where he can share with you where we're investing these funds in our schools.
Can I ask one question for clarification? The additional state revenue is 8.6 million?
8.5 million roughly. 8,457,930.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have one question. And that's only because this is a benchmarking year,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So that won't be continuous every
Right.
year, just this one year.
Exactly.
So with that, can I ask another clarification? Is that a shot in the arm or is that sustained funding?
No, shot in the arm.
Shot in the arm.
When you in a re-benchmarking year, they take all these formulas, they put them in a big pot and shake them up, and normally it relates to more revenue for many school divisions. But the next year of the biennium, normally there's not new money, and especially that much new money because they don't re-benchmark every year. They do that every 2 years. So you get it in the first year. The second year, they may make some small changes, but it will nowhere near be $8.5 million.
So they're gonna give us 8.5 million and the next year they're gonna take 8.5 million out of our budget?
No, they won't take it out, but you won't see new revenue in the same
Okay,
amount.
so it's gonna be
Just the one
sustained
time.
revenue
Right.
rather than one-time funding?
Right.
I guess I should have used the financial terms, I'm sorry.
Right.
So this is sustained funding, not one-time allocations?
It can be sustained, but 9
Okay.
times out of 10, you won't see it. We probably won't be reduced next year,
Okay,
but you won't see a large amount of money where this money is coming every year like that.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, I mean, and just to piggyback if I'm understanding, so this, we're getting this 8.5 because of the re-benchmarking. And what you're saying is, we'll get it the following year, but we could get less because of it. So that less could be something like 8.1 or 8.3.
Well, it could be very much less than that.
Or-
It may your baseline might, let's say our baseline is the $84 million that we're getting from state. You may
Right.
see another million on that. We don't know because
Or
it
a
depends
million
on
less.
legislation. Could be less. No,
Yeah.
it's not, but it could be, depending on the state revenue picture and the initiative that the governor puts in that proposal in the second year. But you will not see an increase like that next year unless
Right.
something happens that has never happened before.
Okay, makes sense. Did you have your, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. My first priority this year is employee compensation. I'm not alone in believing we need to be as competitive as possible in offering staff salaries. Compensation was also the top priority from our budget survey participants and in our conversations with school members. As you know, the governor's proposed biennial budget for 2022 includes a 3% raise for all SOQ funded positions. However, similar to previous years, the state does not include funding for a raise until fiscal year 21-22. Therefore, there is no funding in fiscal year 2021 for that raise. That said, the importance of providing our employees with a salary increase cannot be underestimated. We must remain competitive in the employment marketplace, and with teacher shortages being a nationwide problem, providing a competitive wage for instructional staff is vital. For example, let's take a look at the teacher salaries as they make up the largest portion of our payroll. For fiscal year 2018, which is the most recent data available, Portsmouth ranks third in the 7-city Hampton Roads region with an average salary of $53,725. Just to put that into context, we had the 5th highest salary in the prior year, so we've risen 2 spots. By the way, the state average for teacher salaries is $57,261. In order to attract and retain the most qualified educators, we need to keep pace with our neighboring school divisions. As a result, I'm recommending a 2% increase for all staff members as part of this 2021 budget. Again, I want to reiterate, the governor's proposed budget requires school divisions in the Commonwealth to provide a total 3% raise over the 2 years of the 2020-22 biennium. However, as mentioned earlier, the funding for this raise is not included in the governor's budget until fiscal year 21-22. We would receive credit for any raise given in fiscal year 2021, and that will be added to any raise given in fiscal year 21-22. That total should be equal at least to 3% in order for PPS to accept the state's compensation supplement revenue. Please keep in mind that the funding from the state for this raise only includes SOQ positions, which are the minimum staffing standards for school divisions in Virginia. The total cost of a 2% raise is $2.3 million and is included in our budget estimate for fiscal year 2021. In addition to staff raises, this budget also includes approximately $1.4 million of initiatives that are designed to enhance instructional programs, student supports, and school climate and safety. In the next few slides, I will give you the background information on why these initiatives are necessary additions for the fiscal year 2021 budget. In the instructional category, we have added the following positions to support instructional excellence. The governor's proposed budget provided an additional SOQ funding for school counselors. This will continue the state's multi-year initiative to reduce the staff ratios at all levels. To comply with the reduction in staffing ratios, we are required to add 4 high and 2 elementary school counselors. A barbering teacher at IC Norcom to continue to expand our career and technical programs offered within our schools. A testing coordinator to help our Office of Research and Evaluation to continue to effectively manage and provide valuable information as it relates to assessment and accountability at the state and federal levels. 3 special education program specialists to assist with the requirements for IEPs and other mandated services that we must provide to support our special education students. As our special education population is steadily increasing, these professionals will allow us to efficiently and effectively serve and meet the needs. Continuing in the instructional area, the addition of 3 middle school music teachers. Currently, the high school music teachers serve both the high school and the middle school in their zone. The addition of these teachers will allow teachers at both levels to focus on the school and level which they are assigned. The school to career transition lead for career and technical education would be responsible for the planning, administration, and assessment of industry credentials and work-based programs. They would also be responsible for developing and nurturing partnerships with businesses and community as a whole. Churchland High School is the only school that does not have a graduation coach. This will provide equity so that they can have the same resources as IC Norcom and Woodrow Wilson, and will continue to support our efforts to improve the on-time graduation rate. In order to provide additional support at the early stages of development of our youngest students, we would like to add 4 PALS instructional assistants to assist our teachers to provide high-quality education instruction within the classroom. In total, these additions would cost approximately $1.1 million. Student support services are critical to the success of many of our students and their families. As such, we've included the following to address areas where we can provide additional assistance to our students and their families. 3 attendance liaisons. Since school attendance is now included in the criteria for state accreditation, these positions will assist in evaluating attendance and truancy patterns. We will assign these new attendance officers as a dedicated resource in schools with the highest percentage of students with attendance issues. A central nurse position to provide support to our schools when nurses are absent or when there is a need for another resource to provide additional support to a building or buildings. Funding to support the equity adjustments of some of our nurses that was presented at the school board meeting on December 5th, 2019. This will be the beginning of a multi-year effort to adjust the salaries of nurses to attain equity with their peers. These additions to student supports will cost approximately $233,443. As we all know, school climate and safety are vital to the operations of each school building. In light of this, we have made the following school climate and safety addition a priority in this budget at a total cost of $25,360. Continuing our focus to advance safety initiatives, we are proposing to add one school security officer at Churchland Middle School. This will bring the total number of school security officers at Churchland Middle to 3, which will have one for each floor at the school. Other budgetary additions in this budget total approximately $5.8 million. This mainly as a result of the additional state funding through re-benchmarking and includes the following: additional support of student hardware and software and classroom technology to ensure that our students and staff have access to current technology resources to enhance and making their learning environment more engaging. This includes replacement of Chromebooks for students, the purchase of additional laptop carts for classroom use, replacement of classroom projection systems, and other technology initiatives. Funds to refurbish and upgrade collections, equipment, and furniture in our libraries. Increases in the amounts allocated to keep up with the rising costs of providing services to our special education students who attend the regional CSEP program. Continuation of the support and expansion of dual enrollment, first college and early college programs in collaboration with Tidewater Community College. Funding to support professional development so that staff members continue to be well-trained and familiar with the latest educational strategies to foster student success. Increases in the cost of software subscriptions for human resources software and programs that support the division's employee base. The city informed us late December that they plan to discontinue fleet management services to PPS as of June 30, 2020. Therefore, this change required an increase in the budget so that we can continue to ensure our fleet is well maintained and available to provide services to our students and staff. We're currently planning for this transition and exploring our options as it relates to procuring an outside vendor to provide fleet management services. As we continue to evaluate and ensure that our transportation routes are most efficient and effective, upgrades to our transportation routing software are necessary to accomplish that goal. Therefore, we have increased funding in that area and an increase for rising utility costs for our schools and other facilities. Over the years, we have had to postpone or eliminate the replacement of operations and maintenance vehicles and equipment such as backhoes, loaders, trucks, and other heavy equipment. In addition, we also need to purchase new custodial equipment to replace items that are well past their useful lives. An increase in the general fund transfers to other funds to cover increases in risk management and expenditures. As stated, these additions total approximately $5.8 million. As you know, all school capital improvement projects in excess of $50,000 and with a useful life of 10 years or more are submitted to the city for approval and inclusion in the city capital improvement plan. As a result, we work closely with city staff to identify and manage the projects that are approved. For the fiscal year 2019-20 year, we have a plan to submit for the following projects for consideration of the inclusion of the city's CIP plan. We have also included school bus fleet replacement in our CIP request to ensure that our bus fleet can remain in compliance with state guidelines for buses utilized for student transportation. If you recall, 34 school buses that had achieved their useful life were approved by the school board to be auctioned in May of 2019. Therefore, to continue to remain in our current replacement cycle, we need to purchase additional buses. Upgrades are needed to replace the HVAC system at Churchland Middle School, continue work on the cooling tower and the switchgear electrical system at Woodrow Wilson High School. Playground equipment at many locations throughout the school district are in dire need of replacement. Therefore, this is the first year of a multi-year approach to replace playground equipment for the entire school district. Lighting is needed on the softball and baseball fields at Churchland High. Currently, neither Churchland nor Norcom have field lights. We're working to light fields one school at a time to help the school's spring athletes as they train and compete. As I conclude this presentation, let me say that we here at Portsmouth Public Schools are committed to the success of every child who walks through our school doors. We want to see each and every one of our 13,900 students cross that stage in June and have the same proud smiles of the graduates you see on the screen now. In order to achieve this, we have to be as strategic and forward-thinking with our funding as we are passionate for the success of our students. We know that the investment in education is the best investment anyone can make. Taxpayers, lawmakers, board members alike. We will continue to share our story and make the case known for K-12 funding at the local, state, and national levels. I'm proud of the proposed budget brought to you tonight. It is my belief that it makes the most of every dollar we have today in order to bring the best out of our classrooms now. Members of the board, this concludes my overview of the superintendent estimate of needs. I stand ready to receive any questions or comments that you may have.
Board members, do we have any questions? Hypothetically, I mean, I don't have all of the, I didn't write all this down, but based on our earlier meeting, if we were under a formula-based budget, majority of what you presented to us tonight would go away. Because there would be no way. I mean, all we're going to be getting is a little over $500,000. I just wondered, let's be realistic, because we got to talk about, Reverend Patello and I are going to be going to, I guess, going to a liaison meeting. I mean, we got to be realistic, because I need to know how you feel. I mean, as we go down this road. I mean, the superintendent and the school board is required by law to present an estimate of needs. Every year we go down this road and we have to go and, as I think Mr. Bill Moody said, you know, if we do the formula base, then you don't have to come groveling, you don't have to fight, you know what you're gonna get, then you can do your budget. But our job is to make sure that when a superintendent and a board submits and approves a budget, we are submitting exactly what the state says, an estimate of needs, what we need. The bottom line is every year, we have to go through and we have to cut the majority of the things that we need. Now, all of us have the opportunity, 2 by 2, to sit down with Dr. Bracy and go over our passion, what we wanted in this budget. And this is what Dr. Bracy has done, along with Mr. Falk, taking the numbers. This is it. I got to know, and I don't know how Reverend Patello, because when we go to a meeting, I mean, at some point when we meet on the 24th, the majority of what he's going to be doing of that meeting will be presenting these needs. How does this come? How does this fit? How does this budget fit? If we were starting a formula-based budget, how much of this would we have to reduce? What would be left in the budget?
According to the numbers that they gave us, we're asking for $1.1 million.
Okay.
So if we would receive the money they say we receive based on this estimate, we would get an additional $589,178,
Right.
which would leave a difference of about $510,822. So that's what we would need to reduce at this point if the funding formula went forward as it was presented tonight.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So as of right now, and I can't recall off the top of my head, this fiscal year, what did we request from the city?
The city, they approved $55.4 million.
Okay.
Roughly, as what our local appropriation from the city would be. Exactly $55,396,045. So their estimate in the presentation that we just received would be that they would give us an additional $589,178 for next year.
So I'm thinking what Board Member Schmidt was asking was, how much additional did they give us
Oh,
Right.
last year? I think it was around 800,000, right?
It was
2.6 million on the dot.
I know, 54 was our base already, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the end, they gave.
It was 52.
52.4.
52.4. But then we had to have a revolution and get all the teachers.
Right. So in fiscal year 19, they gave us 52.7. In fiscal year 20, they gave us 55.4.
Exactly.
Looking at the chart that they gave us tonight.
Exactly.
Okay.
That is correct.
So my quick
2.6 million.
math is 2.6.
Right.
That was, we were trying not to leave any money on the table
Mm-hmm.
for, that the state provided
Mm-hmm.
to get the credit for the raises.
And if we recall, that $2.6 million was the amount of the raise last year, that 3%.
Right.
So that was the additional amount we asked the city to provide over their baseline budget.
So that's what I was asking.
Yes.
What total
2.6
did we,
million.
2.6
Last year is what they gave us
last year? And
additional.
so, not this upcoming fiscal year, but the next fiscal year, we're gonna have to essentially ask them for another grave amount of money
Possibly.
due to
Well,
the
look,
proposed budget.
in 2021, as our current request, they will still need to provide us the 510,000 based on the 500,000 that they're gonna, that's proposed in the form.
Right.
Would that cover the raises?
No,
For this
For
year.
this year.
For this year.
for this year, but that's because we're on the second year of the proposed budget from the governor.
First year.
First year.
First year.
No.
Yeah,
Oh, you mean the upcoming
Right.
fiscal year?
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. But again, the second year is when we're gonna have to request what?
But we don't know at this point.
Well, but
Right.
let's say we will have to request what we did before. And so what they're stating is that we would have to ask them
In the resolution.
in a resolution. And when they say significant, my question was, I don't understand what constitutes as significant.
Any,
Like, is there an
SOQ
amount?
required.
And I'm gonna ask you guys if you can ask them, when they state significant, what does that mean? Like, is that a 2% difference? Is that a flat amount of, you need more than 200,000 or $1 million? Is when we have to agree to a tax rate? Like, what is considered significant?
anything above what the funding formula is yielding, that's significant.
That's significant.
Right, that's
to them.
significant. That was something that was discussed
Right, okay.
at the time. And that was where they put that language in there because some of the other locales had that in there as well, that we would support a tax increase. Basically, that would be something that we would have to champion and lead. And if you remember, there was some discussion about the Eat for Education. I know the folks on the committee, the liaisons are familiar with it, but even with that, they would, what Dr. Patton said, she presented it to council and it died. But it wasn't any effort to go out there to the community to seek any type of support. So if we want to do that now going forward, what she basically said is that that's something that we would have to push to the community for the.
So we would have to advocate for a
Yes.
tax increase.
Right.
For the city.
Yes. And I don't want
Okay.
to assume that they would be hands off and it's all on you,
Right,
but
got it.
And I wanted to bring out something, and maybe I'm wrong because I get the years mixed up. But it seems to me last year, when the city manager made her budget proposal, it did not include the raises. And that's when we, as a board, and teachers and the employees looking over there, that we had to rise up and say, no, And then they backed down, and somehow they found the money to give us for the raises. Otherwise, we would have turned back with somewhere around, a little over $1 million because we didn't meet the 3%. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was no money.
Zero. She didn't put any money.
Nothing.
She didn't put any money for the teacher raises. I mean, I just have to speak my mind. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
No. And I think that was one reason I said at the joint meeting, that it does depend on what council we have and the will of the council.
I love that what you said.
Because they do find it when it all depends on the makeup
Right.
of who's on city council. And we know that the majority that we've had for the last 4 years have not been education friendly. So although the funding formula, is a great idea, but a city like Virginia Beach and Norfolk, they have so much more revenue
Right.
than we do. Because Virginia Beach's budget was like $800 and some million. And at the end of the year, they turned back $99 million that the city council gave every penny back to them.
Right.
Because they believe
Right.
in a great school system.
Right.
So I do say, and I brought up the point up there, because each year we fight over this.
I know.
But public safety, and I'm all for public safety,
Right.
but they get the top funding level more than the school system. So my question to them, are they going to be based on a funding formula?
It was a good
Because
question.
they get what they ask for.
Right.
But we have to fight and struggle because we have to be advocates for our children because they don't have the voice. So I just think that what they presented to us, I think it was a good discussion because we hadn't seen any of it. But I do kind of think that meeting that they're going to have with the liaisons probably won't be very effective because you could tell by the conversation from the people that were there.
Right.
They felt like we should take whatever the committee recommended. And I said to them, I'm in a lot of groups and committees meet, but they bring it back to the full body for discussion. So we don't have to accept what the committee says.
That's correct.
But, it is a start, but, the board, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the board has to vote
Yes.
to agree to this too, not
Has
just
to be-
city council.
Correct.
Yeah, well, I think we should take our chance on some new council people.
Ms. Shoemaker, that's fine.
And it was mentioned that a lot of people mentioned and ran off of
Funding.
formula funding. I was one.
I was one too.
But
I
here's
was
the
open to
issue that I have with that. Formula funding was a great idea, and still is,
Yeah.
if it benefits both parties,
Right.
not just one.
Right.
And if we're not gonna be fair about what we're gonna receive,
Correct.
then no, I don't think it's a good idea for Portsmouth
Right.
to go off of formula funding. Now, other cities, it may work.
Right.
But if we can't come to an agreement, again, I was one that stated that we should do formula funding because I thought it would decrease the confusion,
Right.
the arguments,
Right.
and the back and forth.
Right.
However, we still have to account for the students, the teachers, and education in general.
Correct.
And if it's not gonna benefit that,
Right.
I, for one, will not vote for it.
Right.
So I just want to make that clear because one of the council members stated that, well, some of you guys ran off of
Yeah.
formula funding. You're absolutely correct.
Right.
If it was for the benefit
Right.
of the school system.
Right.
So I just wanted to make that clear.
Right. Ms. Hines?
Just to piggyback off what Ms. Shoemake said, was in our very first joint meeting that we had as this board and that council in 2016, after that election, we all sat up on the 6th floor and formula funding was brought up then. And there was a lot of back and forth discussion between a few of us and city council about how to get it off the ground. And I was glad when it came back up in the 2018 election because it still meant those people were having those discussions. But just because a committee brings it does not mean that it has the blessing of everybody involved. There has to be discussion, and there's going to be back and forth, you know. And so I'm in agreement that this has to be beneficial to both parties, and I'm not trying to get my unfair share.
Right.
But I'm trying to, when I brought it up in 2016 when we started having these initial discussions, it was to ease the tensions in the city so that we didn't have to go with our hat in a hand.
Correct.
Yes, sir, may I please have another, you know? So I'm hopeful and prayerful that these discussions will lead to something that is beneficial to everybody. But I think, and I'm done with that. So my question is, with us giving the 2% raise this year, if we're able to do that, then what do we have to give the following year to match in that biennium? So that would be a 1% raise, which if I take the math and do less than, half that, so that's another $1.2 million, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That we would have to get next year for those raises. And is there money in the state biennium for the 2022 to cover that?
In the biennium, as it stands now, we would get funding for that 3% raise in 21-22.
Okay.
So as it stands now at 3%, of course, history has shown that the state has done some interesting things in that second year of the biennium. Last year, it was originally 3 and then it jumped to 5.
Right.
So you just never know what they're going to do.
Okay.
But as it stands right now, yes ma'am, 2%, if we did 2% this year, we would have to do another 1% next year, and the funding would come next year.
Okay.
For SOQ positions only.
Correct. Correct.
Sal?
Just so I make sure that I'm clear, they want to start this formula funding effective when?
Now.
This budget.
That's what I wanted to make sure I'm clear about. My concern is, this is the middle of February.
I know, but there's no way.
There's no way, we're just getting this, and look at all that we had to go through this evening.
Right.
And then there'll have to be negotiation, come back to us, negotiation. I also think that the public should be made aware of exactly what this means.
Right.
Because it may sound all well and good, it's a formula funding plan, however, this is all we're gonna get in addition to. So, I don't even think this is a feasible situation for it to go forward so quickly. I don't wanna feel rushed. I don't know about anybody else, but to me, this is so late for us to kind of decide, yes. I mean, we get this the same night as we had the superintendent's estimate of needs. We already know we need more. So, I think the conversation needs to be at this point, do we try to move forward and see if we can do this and mitigate the fallout as much as possible? Or say, we're not open to trying this until the next budget season where we all have a chance to hash this out in a manner to which is conducive to both the schools and the city.
Right. This is
Because just because this has been presented to us don't mean we have to do it for this budget season. And I don't want us to feel forced that we have to do it for this budget season either. But also understand if we don't do it for this budget season, there could be some
Yeah, I know.
extenuating circumstances
Yes.
with the budget that we
Right.
think we should get.
Right. And this is feedback that I don't want to hear from you. And I tried to be as professional as I could and weave in this whole thing. And Ms. Williams, when she kind of touched base on the will of the council, that I wanted to weave in the fact that we are still dealing, and I wanted to, Mr. Falk, we're still dealing with risk management of the 5.1. Now, they said, and you got a copy of it, and the reason I'm saying this now in public is because I don't have a lot of trust. Because the bottom line is that he got another letter, and he worked on the answers. He sent the answers to them. Guess what? They weren't satisfied. It wasn't to their satisfaction. So they're going to kick the can down the road as long as they want to, and as long as this board can tolerate it. Because he's got what, 5 more? He's got 5 questions that they keep throwing questions, and we're never going to get out of the 5.1 million, the 1.9. That's our money. I don't think we're going to ever. I don't think it's going to, because they're going to kick the can down the road. We haven't even resolved the 3.6. If y'all recall, the 750 was going to be for church and athletic and all of that. That was 750. The rest of it was going to go back into the risk management. We haven't even got that far yet. So how in the world can we start talking about formula funding when we can't even trust them with reappropriating money that is our money? That's my issue. And I'm as I said, I'm really tired of the fact that we have been talking about risk management for the last 6 months. And I'm tired of Mr. Falk and his staff having to spend all their time answering questions and then turn around and get another letter and asking more questions. So tonight, when we go into closed session, there's something I'm going to have to ask you guys to do, because I'm kind of, anyway. It's Alan, then Ms. Hines.
The other thing about this policy, we need to look at the reversion of funds. We're in that same situation right now, and it clearly states here, we may request, but it doesn't say, and we have to do it by a certain time. This is not clear what the procedure truly is, because if it were, then we wouldn't be going through what we're going through now. You give us this, we ask for that. We give us that, we ask for this.
Right.
I mean,
Are you finished?
yep.
Going back to your point about the letters, what was shared with me in a conversation was the fact that City Council sent over questions at some point in December. And when they met,
And you got a copy of it.
and when they, meaning council, met last week, what was shared with council was the fact that we had not answered
Right.
those questions. And so then they sent the letter over to get that. So the letter that they sent over, was that additional questions, or did they receive the answers to their original December questions and now we have a new set of questions? That's the case.
They
So-
asked for additional information in the December letter from our end that has nothing to do with the claim.
Right?
For 5 years of information for a number of areas.
Right.
That not specific to the 1920 year, but we need information about stop loss for the last 5 years. That has nothing to do with the claim, in our opinion.
Right, and
That
my city
we've sent
council
to them.
person, I'm sorry, my
No,
city
you're fine.
council person was like, I don't understand, we don't need that either. So I'm not, so I'm
Right.
not, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
When they send you, so just so I understand the train of information, the city manager's office sends this information to you.
City attorney.
City attorney.
The city attorney sends
Yes,
this information to you. You send the information back to the city attorney.
Correct.
Who else is CC'd on that information?
Dr. Bracy and Dr. Pat.
And this is what my concern is. What board member Hines just said is that the council people are saying, we're not sending them the information. Can you just not send it to the council at the same time so they at least know that they're getting it? Can you CC them in on it too?
We don't have a problem with it. They sent it, when he sent the letter, he sent it to Mr. Falk, copied me and Dr. Patton. So we just returned suit. Now, we've done that in the past when we were corresponding earlier. We
Right.
sent it to the council.
Because it just seems like there's always a couple of council people that says, we don't know, we don't know. You're not giving, but you say it as if it's fact that we're not giving you something. Well, give it to all of them. Inundate them. So they can see how stupid this back and forth stuff is. Then you can't say you didn't know, because now you know. If you don't know, you know.
Ms. Williams?
Well, I think they use that as an excuse.
But if we don't send it though, they can continue to
Because
use it.
it's the same thing that happened in the meeting when Dr. Bracy said that Dr. Patton
Right.
about the vehicle thing. And she said she never discussed that with him. Then he goes and pulls the executive brief And she jumps up and runs out of the room and said, where did that come from? I don't remember, you know, so.
But like I
we
just
have
shared-
a question, we have some issues of credibility and integrity
Right.
with this group.
And just
And
to,
it's not going to change because it is who they are.
right.
No matter how much we send them.
Yeah, but I just think it's best to send it and
You know, I
they
think
got
the
it.
city is really broke, pretty, not broke, but that money they're holding on because they don't want that bond rating to, because somebody's looking at the finances, and I think they're trying to hold it as long as they can. But instead of them being honest and talking with the superintendent in the chair,
Right.
they keep trying to work Mr. Falk to death and want him to quit. Or something, because their whole finance department, I'm told, has left. About 10 people there. They don't have a CFO, they don't have, and this comes from people that work in the
Right.
city.
I did
So-
meet the,
So it's an issue. I mean,
Well,
until we can change this council and the upper leadership, how long we been going through this every year?
Good.
I've been here 6 years,
6 years, and I've been going through it for,
go ahead.
well, but I'll be perfectly honest, the year that Kenny Wright was mayor, and it was Kenny Wright, Mark Whitaker, Bishop Edmonds, Paige Terry made up the 4. Danny Meeks was another one. They supported the schools.
Right.
That was doing a 4-year term. But for the other 8, when we haven't had them, that's why my comment tonight was it is the will of the council. Because in fact, Mr. Rowe was city manager, if you remember. He was proposing a 17-cent tax increase.
Yep.
And the council said, no, we can find this money for the schools. They found the $6 million for the schools. We haven't had a tax increase or whatever. So it is, to me, the will of the council and whether they believe in public education or not. So we did.
Oh, you finished? Okay. Ms. Hunt?
I would just like to say regarding the executive brief that was brought to the attention of city manager, it was in an email, and Dr. Bracy did open up his email and showed it to me, that executive brief had been sent by the city manager, so, and not that there was any ever doubt of where it came from, however, I just
She
wanted you
swore
to
me
know.
down. I'm sitting next to her.
Right.
And she said, oh, I didn't do that. I didn't send that.
But just to clarify for Dr. Bracy, what I saw with my own 2 little eyes is the email.
Okay.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
funding formula, can I go back to that real quick, just to throw it out there?
Yeah, because I want to feed battle, because Reverend Patel, I've got to,
If, and this is an if the casino makes it through referendum, and if the casino gets here, I would like to be able to go back and to review this funding formula and have a discussion with city council about a guaranteed revenue stream that should come from that casino to the education system here in Portsmouth Public Schools.
all right, this is what I'm hearing from you. 'Cause I don't mind meeting, but I don't want to go to a meeting that this board is not going to be in favor of approving a resolution. Now, that was what I was going to throw out tonight. He and I don't mind going to the meeting and showing that we're there to listen. But we want to do what the will of the board is. And I've just set aside being chair. I'm a school board member. I'm just chairing the meeting. I'm not going to vote on this resolution because I don't think it's going to be fair to our children or to our employees. Now, a lot of people will say, well, you are a very closed person. You're not willing to be open to new ideas. But I've been down this road. This is my 9th year being on this board. Previously, I was on the other side. I have lived through a lot of these budget presentations. And I agree with Ms. Williams. I agree with all of you. To me, there is no trust. I cannot trust when the city manager is sitting there knowingly lying and you've got the superintendent having the documentation that, basically says that's not true. And when you have a consultant that's standing up there and saying it was the consensus of the board, when I talked to both of our representatives, it wasn't the consensus, and that's why we tried to make a point. You mean to tell me that everybody on this committee, the 100%, and this Dr. Bracy and I heard before, it was not 100%. They weren't even given an opportunity to really weigh in on the 30%. They wouldn't even listen to Dr. Robbins, the consultant. So, I mean, I don't mind meeting, but I'm going in that meeting, and I agree with your recommendation. Let's see, because I did ask him about revenue. I mean, where's the revenue coming? Well, guess what? Pavilion's gonna open next month, so that may be revenue. Well, where else is the revenue coming from?
Right.
So I don't see how, I agree with Ms. Allen, I don't see how in the world we're going to implement formula-based budget this year.
Right.
It may be
And-
2 years down the road. I don't know, but I don't want to go into a meeting, but you guys are going to vote on it. I mean, I'll go and listen.
Ms. Williams did ask in the larger meeting, and I don't think she ever got an answer. The other cities, yes, Virginia Beach is based off of their totality of revenue, but Hampton has their formula funding housed in their real estate property. Real estate and other real estate things. So it's real estate tax, it's utilities, and whatever else goes in with real estate. And in my opinion, real estate is more sustainable than total revenue. So, I mean, you can still get to, I mean, Hampton is 60%, give or take a few, in their revenues for housing, and their budget is what our budget is now. So, I mean, if we're going through this housing boom where, seemingly we're putting houses up and putting apartments up and putting everything up, where our growth is going to be is in real estate. It's not going to be in tax revenue because there's nothing there. You're talking about economic development.
Right.
And my husband sat on that committee for 5 years, and I always look at him and say, what are you giving me this month? And it was just a running joke at our house. So, I mean, I don't know if we can get it to another spot in their budget, that something that's a little bit more sustainable, but for it to come out of tax revenue,
And I'd be willing to go with suggestions such as that. I don't want to waste my time and go and just listen.
I don't even.
I want to go and present options and feedback we want to take back to them and see if we can work it out and come to an agreement. But I'm not going just to sit and listen. I know I'm not going to vote on it. So if that's the consensus, I'd rather not go. And someone else can go in my place. But if you want to go and try to lobby and work some things out, I'm all for that.
Ms. Williams?
Look, I think it's important that we go and be at the table because then they're going to say we didn't.
We shut it down. Right.
But when you go, have some recommendations. Because I think Mayor Rowe was very amenable to me.
Correct.
As far as not killing it or at least have the discussion.
Right.
And he said, this is the first time we've all seen it.
Right.
So this is just a starting point.
Correct.
So it wasn't like, I think the liaisons, on the other hand, they sounded kind of baked in.
Right.
And what they.
Oh, yeah.
But we still should be there to present
some options.
Some options.
Right.
And
maybe before you get there, meet with Dr. Bracy and Mr. Clark and Dwight and come up with some other things, like Sarah.
And not to discuss the chair, but I would appreciate if the board members would actually send some options and present what it is you send.
In my rough numbers, and I don't want y'all to think I don't want you to think I'm overstepping. This isn't it. This is just for me to have knowledge. Based off the 2018 Portsmouth budget, for us to get to $55 million in the 2018 budget, that would be a 60% tax rate on real estate taxes. Which, when you look at Hampton's numbers, Hampton is sitting at a 60% residential related taxes to get to their formula funding. So, I mean, yeah, we can be compared to Norfolk all we want to, but let's also look at something that's a little bit more sustainable. Because we don't have the tax revenue that Norfolk has. We don't have the tax net revenue. But what we do have is we do have steady real estate. We do have real estate taxes here in Portsmouth, that they stay the same and that they do increase. You know, every now and then they do increase, but we're also putting up new. So, I mean, I don't want to just be locked into one, but I mean, I can send you all this, that's not a problem. But if you're looking at rough numbers, 60% of our 2018 was 55 million.
Right.
And I can send you guys some information
Please.
as well, because historically,
Please.
when I spoke about formula funding, that is actually what I was referring to.
Okay.
Because when formula funding first started around the United States, they started with doing it off of real estate. Not this other formula situation, but it was real estate. So I can actually send you guys that information, because that was what I was going off of when I ran.
That'd be great.
Not that,
Right.
but the real estate.
Right. And while we're talking about formula-based and committee meetings, may I?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I don't like the fact that we would have to be out there trumping up for our own tax.
Oh,
I mean, because if we're gonna do that, you might as well just give me taxing authority. Because anytime they wanna do a raise that isn't necessarily, they just go to their fund balance and bring it out and make it all okay. And that's kind of where I was going with saying what we were mandated and what we had to do. We don't have the taxing authority. We're at the pleasure of all the people that want to throw into our hat to make it complete. But that is my heartburn, that you're gonna put a tax increase and you're gonna put it at my feet and you're gonna make me have to go out and do it. And so anytime there's a tax increase, it's gonna be for the schools, not necessarily to make the city better.
right.
You know, so, but if you can guarantee, if you're gonna raise the taxes and you're gonna guarantee me a 2%, you know, 2 of every 3% that you're gonna raise is gonna come to me, make it a dedicated, maybe you make part of this your dedicated tax stream that comes to us. Out of every, you know, $100 or 100, you know, bring it to us. You know, give us a dedicated tax revenue stream.
Ms. Atkinson, what's
Just
your
be
opinion?
quiet
I know
tonight.
that you weren't upstairs, but during this discussion, give me some of your feedback of how you feel about it.
I'm gonna just email you, because I'm not really like for formula funding, you know, as if it's taken from the real estate tax, then I am. But when it eats into other things, I'm not really for it. And then you gotta think about the long term of formula funding. What if there's a boom, or you have an economic increase and the city funds, are they gonna stick to that formula funding, or are they gonna increase the funds?
Right.
So you have to be careful with it, because you can get locked in. And again, when the city starts making money, they can say, hey, you guys agreed on the formula funding, we
Right.
don't have to increase it beyond that.
Right.
So that's one thing to think about in the long run, and especially if this casino comes to Portsmouth, that's really gonna increase, you know, the taxes and the phone, so.
Mr. Barnes, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not in favor of formula funding, especially without a base. So that was my thoughts on the first. But I think Councilman Paul Battle, when they first came up a couple of months ago, he was talking about the base, and they were saying that they couldn't provide that. So I'm really not in favor of it. But I do like the idea about this real estate tax.
Okay. All right. Ms. Williams, we've heard from you, but do you have anything else you want to? I think Reverend Patel, we got to go to the table, but I think taking your recommendations, that certainly would be good. That would be great. Of course, I'd like to meet with Dr. Tracy and Mr. Falk and
I think the 30% would still be whether it still would be 30% based on whether it was an increase in revenue or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But as it was presented, I don't see where it would be beneficial for our students with all that we need to have done.
Okay.
That definitely was on the issue.
Okay. All right. I think we've,
Can the board
Dr.
know
Tracy,
when that
thank you
meeting
for
is?
your, ma'am?
Can the board know when that meeting is?
As soon as we get, I will let you know, as soon as I get a date, and I'm sure we've got to work our calendars, but it looked like they wanted it done this week.
And then my next question would be is can there be a gallery? Can other people from this board come and sit at this committee meeting?
I don't care.
Not have input, but at least to be in the room.
The only other thing, if it's more than what, 2 or 3, you have to be meetings of you can't do, don't you? If it's more than 2.
There are 2 of us and 2 of them.
But if it's 3 more of us,
Even if we're not in the,
You're still
But you're in the
there.
room, you're in the room.
I'm
Yes,
just
ma'am.
trying to get out some more.
my thoughts are, is there a consensus as to whether or not we need to move forward with this for this budget? Because I'm not in favor of that. I don't think
that's an option.
I think they have to share that with the group, but we're not even voting. We're not voting for
Okay, I just wanted to make
No,
sure
no, no,
that was out
we're all in
there.
agreement. We're not going to start
We're
this.
not even in favor of doing it, so you know.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I'm not,
No. In other words, we're going to listen. Our thoughts, it's not going to be for this budget year. It may be
that's what
for
it's saying
a
here.
couple of years down the road. But we're not, this board is not in favor of signing any agreement to begin this year. That's what I'm hearing from you. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
So now that we're closing this, I want to thank the Finance Department and Communications Department for helping craft and put this together.
All right.
thank you for the barber.
Oh, yes.
All right. At this time, Reverend Patella, would you call us into a closed session?
I move the board enter into a closed meeting under the provisions of section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia for the following purpose. Consultation with legal counsel concerning a legal matter requiring the advice by such counsel permitted under subsection 8.7.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mrs. Hines?
Yes.
Reverend Patillo?
Yes.
Mrs. Shoemake?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Parent?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
We are now in closed session. You have already made a motion to adjourn, and there was a second by Ms. Williams.
Oh, we did it twice. So,
I don't care at this point.
all right. Hey, all right, see y'all next time.